DreAllDay.com.
We're now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you have expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself. Actually, especially yourself is a better way of saying it, that moves any one of us to go and make things happen instead of wait for things to happen. And then what I'm going to do for you here on this show is we're going to put all this together into one bundle, one package, one mindset, one framework, one philosophy, one approach. And we give you a daily masterclass and make sure you stay on point. That is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and I'm happy to have you here. Welcome to the show. And today's topic, we're going to talk business today. We're going to talk traditional versus self-publishing. So this topic is for any of you who has written a book, you are thinking about writing a book. Maybe you have a dream that one day, some far off moment in time, you will write a book. Or if you just, now that I'm bringing it up, now that you're thinking to yourself, you know what, Dre, I have an interesting story. Maybe I should write a book. You need to listen to what I'm going to say to you here today, because today we're going to talk about traditional versus self-publishing, what your options are, what are some pros and cons of each. Do you actually have a choice between these two, and how you can make it happen in the area of book publishing, and obviously and what you can do with it. All right, now before I get any further into this, let me tell everybody that I have a text message line where you can text me. Yes, you will really be texting me directly, and you can ask me any questions, share any challenge. You have a follow-up question about anything that I've said here today. You want to set up a free one-on-one call with me where I can find out exactly where you're at, where you're trying to go, and tell you how I can best help you. My text number is 305-384-6894. Again, 305-384-6894. When you get on my text list, into my texting community, you not only can communicate with me directly, you also will receive my daily motivation text messages, which I send out every morning. So if you want to get a daily motivation text, in addition to this daily masterclass, I just like giving out stuff daily and giving out stuff for free. I have a problem. I need to go to some kind of intervention or something. Text that number. Again, that number is also down below in the show notes, wherever you are consuming this. Just scroll down below to the show notes. You'll see that number there, and you can text me directly, and we can go from there. Now, when it comes to traditional versus self-publishing, if you are familiar with me and you know that I've written a lot of books to date as of this recording, I have 29 books out there in the world for people to get. I actually got more than 29, but I'd say 29 official books, but I put out several as audios that are more like shorts. So I actually, if you go on, if you let Google tell it, I might have 100 books out there, but I just say 29. And I got a lot more on the way, as long as I have the capability of getting them out there. And I have put books out both traditionally and the self-published route. So the question that we're going to talk about here today is, which should you choose and why? And what comes with each option. Now, both options, neither option is perfect, neither option is foolproof, and both options come with a little bit of a shit sandwich that you're going to have to eat. If you don't remember my episode talking about that, that was episode 1663. The title is Your Favorite Flavor of Shit Sandwich, meaning that every situation in life, no matter which one you choose, none of them is perfect. There is always a shit sandwich that you have to eat no matter what you do in life. All right, you buy a 10-bedroom house, and maybe a beautiful house, there's a shit sandwich that comes with that. If you live in Airbnbs and just move every week, there's a shit sandwich that comes with that too. And everywhere in between, there's a shit sandwich. It's the same thing when it comes to writing books, the same thing that comes with people, relationships, jobs, vocations, what city you're gonna live in, what kind of car you're gonna drive. There is a shit sandwich that comes with everything in life. The question is not how do you avoid the shit sandwich. The question is just which shit sandwich you choose to consume, because there is no perfect outcome in life. All that being said, when it comes to traditional, let's just be clear what we're talking about here when we're talking traditional and self-publishing. Traditional publishing means, just to make sure everyone's on the same page here, it means that you have signed a contract with a publishing company, and that publishing company, in exchange for your signing off the rights to that book, they will handle most of the production and distribution of your book. The reason why they're going to do that for you is because they are technically the publisher. They are the owner of the actual work. The book is owned by that company. Now, there are cases where later on you may be able to buy that book back from them. That's only when the book is out of print, i.e., the publishing company doesn't see any need to keep owning that publishing because they're not really selling any more copies of it. So this might be your great grandkids might need to buy that. You might not even be able to buy it in your lifetime, but that's a different conversation that we're not going to get that deep into when it comes to the contract. But traditional publishing is basically you sign off the rights to the book, ownership of that book. In exchange, they're going to do pretty much everything other than write the book to help you get it out there into the world. And also not going to sell the book. So there's two things you got to do. Now, self-publishing, on the other hand, and we're going to go into detail on all this as we get into this, by the way. Self-publishing means you, in exchange for maintaining ownership of everything, all of the intellectual property that goes with your book, you handle everything. You own everything and you handle everything. In other words, you are putting in all the work. In exchange for putting in all the work, you get to own everything, just like we talked about in episodes 1862, where I talked about you want to be a creator or an influencer. Listen to this now. And then I followed up on it in episode 1878, where I told you there's no such thing as an underpaid entrepreneur. The thing about being an entrepreneur is that you eat what you kill. And when you are a self-publisher, everything that you kill is yours because you are 100% in control of everything. So you handle every single aspect of that book. So go pick up a book that you have on your bookshelf, any book, doesn't matter whose book it is, and just look at everything that you think could possibly go into making that book, whether that's the colors, the design of the book, the title, the subtitle, every word, all the editing, getting the book printed, getting it in the stores, getting it out to the customers, the advertising so that you knew about it, shipping the book to you once it's been bought, any issues that come up in between. You are in 100% in control of all of that. But in exchange for doing all that work and taking on all that responsibility, you own everything that comes from that book. So every dollar that gets made off that book pretty much goes through you. That doesn't mean you don't have to pay other people, but the money goes through you and you have all the control. So today, we're going to compare and contrast both options, as well as I'm going to clear up several misconceptions about both traditional and self-publishing that many people either don't know about or think they know about, but don't actually understand. Even people who have written books and either know some of this stuff or maybe they think they know some of this stuff. So let's get into it. The topic, once again, is traditional versus self-publishing. Point number one. First thing, you got to ask yourself the following question. Do you actually have a choice? I've been in, me and my friend Patricia Wooster, who is a author herself. She, I believe, 13-time traditionally published author. That means 13 different times she has gotten a publishing company to offer her a contract to write a published book, and that's an accomplishment because it's hard to get a publishing contract, and we'll talk about that a little bit here today. But Patricia and I have hosted several rooms together along with other moderators on this app called Clubhouse, which I think many of you are familiar with. If you're not, you can look it up. And one of the things that we often get asked when we open the floor for questions, there's often a question that someone will come up, either an author who's already written a book or they're an aspiring author, and they'll say, well, Dre or Patricia or whoever else is up there with us as moderators, they'll say, I don't know. I got this idea for this book, and they'll tell us a little bit about the book or a lot about the book. And they'll say, I don't know. Should I get a traditionally publishing deal? Should I do it that way, or should I go self-publishing route? Which one should I do? And they ask the question as if they have the option of doing either one just at their whim and at their own decision. Often, and this is the first misconception, often you actually do not have the choice of going traditional or self just because you feel like it. In order to publish your book, and now I'll explain what I mean. In order to publish your book traditionally, you have to be signed to a traditional publishing contract, which means someone must offer you a traditional publishing contract. You can't just sign a contract because you decide that you want to. It's kind of like me saying, hey, I like to play basketball. I don't know if I should go play basketball at the playgrounds in the street. Should I go to an empty gym and do YouTube, or should I just go play for the New York Knicks? I don't know. Which one should I do? I can't just decide to go play for the Knicks. Right? Somebody on the Knicks has to be willing to offer me a contract. So if no traditional publishing company offers you a contract, then you don't actually have the option of having a traditionally published book. So to get that contract offer, you probably, most of the time, you're going to need a literary agent. And understand that literary agents are in a buyer's market. So before I go into any deeper what I mean by that, I'll give you one example which you may not need not need a literary agent in order to get a traditional publishing contract. I have a book called Work on Your Game, which is the same title as this show, and that book is traditionally published. I got that traditional publishing contract not through a literary agent. I do not have a literary agent. So how was I able to get a book deal without an agent when I just told you 30 seconds ago that most of the time you need one to get a book deal? I was able to get it because of several factors that I had in my favor. And I want you to understand these factors so that you understand that my situation was an exception usually to the rule. And you should not expect that you're going to be an exception to any rule. The exceptions were, number one, I met an editor from a traditional publishing company who was looking for authors. She was out actively looking for authors to sign to deals, and she found me while I was doing a speaking gig at a big conference. I stepped off the stage at that conference. She approached me, gave me her business card. I called her, followed up. 2 weeks later, I had a signed traditional publishing contract. Number two, the reason why she was willing to offer it to me, number two, was that first of all, she had just heard me explain the entire framework of Work on Your Game on stage. And then the book that I signed the contract for it was based around the exact speech that she had heard me give. And she saw me give that speech. She had vetted me, saw me speak, met me in person. So all of these things had happened, and she had already pretty much vetted, all right, this guy's for real and he knows his stuff. I wasn't just a name, sending an email like many people are when they're trying to get a publishing contract. Number three, at the time that I met this woman, who's the editor for the company that signed me to my publishing deal and put out the book Work on Your Game, I had already written 20 books, self-published. And it's not even the point that I had written those books and put those books out that made me valuable to that publishing company. It was the fact that I had put those books out and sold thousands of books that were self-published. It wasn't the fact that I put them out, it's the fact that I had already sold books, which told them, this is point number four, this is the fourth thing that made me an exception, that I already had an audience. I already had a brand. I already had a base of people, not only who were watching me on YouTube or following me on social media, but actually knew that I wrote books and was conditioned to go get my books and read them when I put a book out. Was told the publishing company, okay, not only is this guy seasoned to write a book, but he's also seasoned to sell a book. And you got to understand that a publishing company is in the business of selling books, not writing books, but selling books. In other words, and I'm going to read between the lines for you here, a traditional publishing company wants to sign contracts with authors who have a base of buyers. Now, sometimes you can have a base of fans. A base of fans is good too. Let's say you got a really popular YouTube channel and this is your first book. If your fan base is strong enough, they'll sign you too, because they will assume and hope that you'll be able to convert those fans and subscribers and freeloaders who are following you on Instagram into actual purchasers of your book. And if your brand is strong enough, you'll be able to do that. But if you have already written books and sold them, even better, because now they already know, your audience knows about you writing books and they're willing to go get them. So understand that traditional publishing companies are in the business of sales. They are not in the business of actually putting out a book just for the sake of saying that they put out a book, which is what a lot of authors are in the business of. A lot of authors just want to say they put out a book. A publisher wants to say they sold a book, because those big buildings that they work in and those office spaces and all the staff that they have working for them, okay, they don't work for free. All right, they work for money. And you know where that money comes from? Actually selling books, not putting out books, selling books. Everybody heard what I just said? Good. So why I mentioned a literary agent is that literary agents are the go-betweens between the publishing companies and the authors. And what this means is, and I'm going to do a whole deep dive masterclass on all of this. Today I'm giving you an overview, but I'm going to give a deep dive masterclass inside one of my masterminds, which by the time you hear this, it may already be available. But if it's not, just send me a text or hit me in the DM somewhere and ask me about it, and I'll give you details, which should be ready by the time this episode comes out. But if it's not, just let me know. Anyway, what the whole deal is, because traditional publishers get so many inquiries of people trying to get a publishing deal, the same way that, let's say, the New York Knicks might get a bunch of basketball players who would just email them cold if the New York Knicks put their email address out there. What they do is they put up barriers to entry. And they say, all right, the only calls we're taking are from agents. The same way the New York Knicks might only take a call from a basketball agent. So they become basically the filter between the team and the general public, because they would get too many inquiries if they just let people reach them directly. So the literary agents, they're the ones who screen all the authors. So if you want to get a traditional publishing contract, you would need to reach out to a literary agent, and the agent will look at your work and they will decide if you are even worthy of being shown to a traditional publishing company. And if you can't find an agent who thinks your work is good enough, then you'll never be seen by a publishing company. They won't even know that you exist. Again, my situation was an exception. I went around that for a couple reasons. Number one, again, this editor at this company happened to see me live in person. She happened to be in the same place that I was, and she was looking for an author. And number two, I wasn't really looking for a traditional publishing deal. So I never went around looking at agents and asking an agent to show my work, because I didn't really give a damn, because I knew I could sell books on my own. I didn't care if I never got a traditional publishing contract, because what I cared about was actually selling books and getting them into the hands of people like you. And whether I did it through a traditional publisher or through self-publishing didn't matter to me, but to a lot of authors, it does matter. Hence, that's why we're doing this class right now. So literary agents, along with publishers, they are in a buyer's market. If you don't know what a buyer's market means, I'll explain it to you very simply. A buyer's market is a market where there are more people trying to sell something than there are purchasers trying to buy something, which means the buyer gets to do the choosing. I'll give you a more basic example. In the dating world, females are the buyers and males are the sellers. Meaning, if an attractive female walks into a room, every eligible male in the room, maybe even some ineligible males are looking at that female, wanting that female to be interested in him. She might have 20 men looking at her, whereas if an attractive man walks into the room, he doesn't get to choose amongst 20 females. He wants one of those females to be interested in him, even though he's attractive. He wants one of those females to choose him. In the dating world, we'll just call it the dating world. Let's just say heterosexual dating world to keep it simple. Females are the buyers, males are the sellers. In other words, males, you are trying to get a female to want you. Females, you have a bunch of men wanting you, and you get to pick which one you're interested in. This is the same way that the publishing world works. The publishers are the females, okay? They get to pick which author they want. You don't pick them, they pick you. Now, there are some exceptions. If you're Barack Obama or who's somebody else, Elon Musk, let's say, somebody like that, then you may have multiple publishers all trying to get you to sign with them, and there's a bidding war, and you've kind of flipped the script. Those people are exceptions. Most of us are not that famous that we're going to be an exception. We need to be chosen. We don't get to do the choosing. But the good thing about this equation that I just explained to you is that we have self-publishing where you don't need anyone to choose you. You can, to quote the title of one of my favorite authors, James Altucher's book, choose yourself. You can choose yourself and put your own book out, and it doesn't matter if a publisher chooses you or even knows that you exist. You can go ahead and put your own books out. I don't think any publisher knew that I existed before I got my publishing deal for my book, Work on Your Game, and I didn't care. Why? Because the bottom line to me was getting the game out to people like you. I didn't care if a publisher had anything to do with it, and that's actually maybe paradoxically one of the reasons why I was able to get that publishing deal, because I didn't need a publishing deal. So to self-publish, all you need is a book and the understanding of how to actually get your book out, and hopefully you're interested in actually selling the book, not just putting it out and saying that, hey, I'm listed on Amazon, but nobody's buying your book. No approvals are necessary. All that being said, let's move on to point number 2. That could be the entire masterclass right there, but I got more points. Point number 2, if you don't mind, I have more. Today's topic is traditional versus self-publishing. Second question you have to ask yourself is, who is this book for? If you're going to publish a book, who are you writing the book for? Who do you want to actually pick up your book and read it? Who specifically are you talking to? No matter how you get your book out there to the world, obviously you want somebody to read it, not just you and your mom, right? Who do you want to read your book? Why? What is it going to do for them? And if you go, and here's a key point that I want you all to understand, especially you aspiring authors. If you go the traditional publishing route, or at least you aim to, you must, capital letters, M-U-S-T, must have this answer articulated, or you won't even get a reply from a traditional publisher or a literary agent by extension. In other words, if you have a book, let's say I write a book called The 4 Keys to Getting Off the Bench in Life. This is an episode that I did, episode 1685. I'm just picking that up randomly. Let's say I wrote a book about that, how to get off the bench in life. The first thing a traditional publisher is going to ask is, who is this book for? What is it going to do for them? And why would that person read it? I must have an answer to that question. If I don't have an answer to that question, the traditional publisher is not interested. Why? Even though it may be a great idea, the only thing a publisher is thinking about, again, I'm going to say this many times today, a publisher is in the business of selling books, not of writing books. So even though you may have a great idea, what the publisher cares about is, how are we going to get this book to get over the register, go through the cash register and get scanned and make a sale, because that's the only way money gets made. And if they're going to invest in putting your book out, they want to make a return on their investment. This is just simple business principles, and all of you should understand this. So you must have articulated who is this book for, what is it going to do for them, how is it going to help them. If you are self-publishing, Even though no one is going to ask you this question directly and you are not necessarily required to answer it, understand, you still need to answer this question because nobody's going to buy or read your book unless they know what the book is going to do for them. I mean, why would somebody buy your book if you can't tell them what the book's going to do for them? I mean, would you buy a book if you don't know what it's going to do for you? When I tell you to get my book, The Mirror of Motivation, I told you 10 different things the book's going to do for you, and I could come up with 100 more. Why is that? Not to impress you, but to impress upon you. It's my job to answer that question. It's my job to ask and answer it before you even think about it. I'm going to say, go get my book, The Mirror of Motivation. I tell you that the book is free. Just cover the shipping. Even though I'm giving you the book for free, I still need to tell you what it's going to do for you, because why should you give your time and energy to even giving the effort to getting a free book if you don't know what it's going to do for you? Because no human being does something for nothing. You're not going to read a book unless you have a reason to believe it's going to do something to help you so that your time investment is worth it, even though it didn't cost you any money. So what I'm going to tell you is, we all understand the concept of goal setting. If you listen to this show, you understand having goals. And you also understand, listen to a show called Work on Your Game, the value of doing work, all right? Working hard and working on your game and having game. But what many people do not understand is the concept of who you need to be as a person. When you change who you're being as a person, the actions that you take are infected by that change in being, and thusly, those actions produce a different result, i.e. you reaching your goals. My book, The Mirror of Motivation, is going to show you how to handle that being part. So then, when you do your work on your game, you get different results. Now that I've told you that, go get the book for free by going to mirrorofmotivation.com. All you're going to do is cover the shipping. There, I just told you in 30 seconds who the book is for, what it's going to do for you, why it's worth it, why it's worth your time investment. And if that doesn't work for you, then I'll come up with a different angle and another one and another one and another one, and understand it is my job as the author to keep coming up with angles until I can get that book into the hands of the people who I believe need to read it. Do you understand that? All of you authors, this is something that many, many authors do not consider, they don't think about, and when they get hit with this question, they are deer in the headlights. You must have an answer to this question no matter how you put your book out. If you have not thought of or answered this question, that is a key insight as to why your book is not getting into enough hands of enough people who need to actually read it. You have good material in your book, but the people who need it aren't getting it because nothing you're saying is moving them to the action of going and getting that book. It's not money that's holding them back. It's not the fact that they don't want to read or that they can't read or that they're lazy. It's the fact that you have not given them a compelling enough reason to go and get it. Again, I'm going to say this again and again and again. It is your job to answer this question. It's actually your job to ask this question. Then it's your job to answer it before your reader even thinks about it. And understand, until you plant this question in the mind of your reader and the answer, no reader is going to go get your book. Okay, so any of you who has written a book and the book hasn't gotten into enough hands, this is usually the reason why. Okay? Have this clear before you even, and here's the thing, you should have this answer clear before you even start writing your book. Now, if you have already written your book or your book has already been out for 3 years, better late than never. Okay? So figure out the answer to this question right now, because you can repurpose and reposition your book only based off of what you say the book is going to do for somebody. You can talk about, because listen, if a book is 100 pages, it might be 50 different things that book can do for different people, depending on how you talk about it. So your book doesn't have to be stuck with one way of talking about it. I can tell you that my book, Work on Your Game, is going to show you how to build discipline, confidence, mental toughness, personal initiative, which is true. But I can also tell you the book is going to show you how to sell yourself. That's also true. There's a whole chapter on that. I can tell you how this book is going to keep you from making bad mental errors that will hurt you in the long run, even though you don't even know you're making the mistakes. That's also true, because there's a chapter on that. I can tell you how reading a book should not be a prescription for how to live your life, which is true, because there's a chapter on that. So you see how I can position the book in different ways, depending on who I'm talking to, depending on the day of the week, however I want to say it, and depending on who I'm selling it to. So your book, depending on how much value is in it, you can come with 20 different angles as to what the book does, who it's for, and how it's going to help them. And you should use all of them. Use all of them, because if any of you, I think a lot of us use the internet a lot, you may notice that certain companies or certain products, they may have 30 different advertisements that they do for the same product, but in each advertisement, they're talking about their product in a different way. Why are they doing that? Because they know that the same pitch is not going to work with every human, because we're all unique, right? So these are all things that you should be keeping in mind when it comes to selling anything in life, including and up to a book. Now, that point right there could have been the whole masterclass. This is a very valuable one that I'm giving you here. You should be taking notes on everything I'm saying here today. Any of you who has ever written or plan on writing a book. Point number 3, and when I do a deep dive on this in my mastermind, which again should be out by this point, you probably want to be there. Any of you who's an author. Point number 3. Today's topic once again is traditional versus self-publishing. Third thing is infrastructure. Traditional publishing offers infrastructure to an author the same way that, let's say, the New York Knicks or the LA Lakers offer infrastructure to a basketball player. A basketball player who plays for the Knicks or the Lakers does not sell tickets. They do not clean up the seats in the arena. They do not hire the concession people. They don't make sure that the beer is cold and that the hot dogs are hot. They don't make sure that the lights are working. They don't hire the dance teams. They don't sell any of the tickets. They don't make sure that the accounts are up to date. They don't wash the uniforms. They don't do any of those things, right? They don't make sure the scoreboard is working. They don't make sure the microphones work for the announcers. They don't hire security to pat people down when they come into the arena. All the basketball player has to do is show up, play basketball, collect the check, and go home. If you think of that same parallel in the traditional publishing world. Traditional publishing offers you all of that infrastructure, so all you have to do is show up, write your book, and then help market and promote the book, actually do all the marketing and promoting of the book so that the book can sell. When you are a self-publisher, you have to do all of those things. So if a basketball player, let's say LeBron James, started his own basketball league, he would have to provide all that infrastructure on his own. So now that's going to take a lot of focus away from his main thing, which is playing basketball. Now he has to do all of this business stuff, or he has to find people who can do all that business stuff. He has to sell the tickets. He got to hire the dance team. He has to wash the uniforms. He got to make sure the schedule is right. He got to make sure nobody else is using the venue so that his game can go on. He got to find the TV contracts, make sure all the cameras are working, make sure there's Wi-Fi in the arena, get all the concession deals done, hire the security staff. You see, there's a whole lot of stuff that needs to be done for a basketball game to happen that most people don't think about when they go to a basketball game. So that infrastructure matters. And that's the reason why, if you know the business of the NBA, you know that the teams take more than 50% of the income that comes in. More than 50% of the income goes to the team, and the rest of it, I believe, is 57%. I believe that's what the collective bargaining agreement is. That number might be off, but it's pretty close. 57% of a dollar that comes in from basketball-related activities for the NBA goes into the pockets of the owners, and the other 43% is split amongst all the players. Now you might say, damn, why are the players only getting 43%? Well, they're only quote unquote getting 43% of a couple $1 billion. So it's not like they're broke. But the reason why the owners are getting the percentage that they're getting is because of the infrastructure that they provide, and it matters. That infrastructure matters. You take that infrastructure away, you just got a whole bunch of really good basketball players who have nowhere to play and nobody knows who they are. So that infrastructure is a big deal. And this is why traditional publishing is the deal that it is, because they offer all of this infrastructure for you. For example, as a traditional publisher, you do the writing, but the editing, the development of your book, developmental editing is what they call that, the organization of your book, also part of the editing, the formatting, meaning the interior formatting, the outside formatting, the cover design, the printing, the actual physical printing of the book, because it's not free to print up a book. It costs money. Every time I ship out a free copy of my book, The Mirror of Motivation, or The Third Day, it costs us money to print that book. That printing the book is not free. Distribution of the book, meaning shipping the book from where we are to where you are, that is not free. I mean, everybody's familiar with UPS and FedEx and the post office, right? Are they free? Absolutely not. All of those things are covered by the publisher when you have a traditional publishing contract. If you are self-publishing, you have to do all that on your own, and you had to foot the bill for all of that as well. But at the same time, you get to keep all of the money when you make a sale. So all of this stuff for a traditional publisher, let's say if you get that infrastructure, you get under that umbrella, this comes at a cost. What is the cost? Not that you have to pay a traditional publisher, but they keep more of the money every time a dollar comes in. The same way in the NBA, they keep 57% of a dollar when a dollar comes in because of the infrastructure they provide. A traditional publisher, it works the same way. They keep a percentage of a dollar every time a dollar comes in, and you get a percentage of a dollar, but they probably get a little bit more simply because they're doing more of the work and because they are technically the owner of that intellectual property. So you're the author of the book, your name is on the book, but they're the publisher who owns the IP because of the deal that they did with you. Now, all these deals are not exactly the same. The publishing deal that I signed is probably not the same as the publishing deal that Barack Obama signed. because Barack probably had a little bit more leverage. So it depends on what's in your contract. So this is something that I've mentioned many times whenever I talk business here on the show over the years. Read your contract. If you sign a traditional publishing deal, read the contract. I know the contract's 20 pages. Read the contract. I know it's a whole bunch of legalese and it looks like a bunch of stuff that they just copied and pasted from somewhere else. Read the contract. I know that it may take you a long time and it may be very tedious, and maybe you feel like the publisher's waiting for you to hurry up and send them back the signed agreement. Read your contract. If you have questions about what is in the contract, here's what you need to do. Go find someone who is a lawyer, not the publisher, because they're on a different side of it. It's just business. Go find someone who is a lawyer or someone who understands law, or just use Google. Go to LegalZoom.com or whatever and ask questions. Make sure you understand everything you are signing when you sign a contract. Any time you sign up for a website and you click a button that says, I agree to the terms and conditions, understand, folks, you are signing a contract. That is a contract you are signing. Read your contracts. All right, have I said that enough times? What I just said? Read your contracts. Point number 4. Today's topic, once again, is traditional versus self-publishing. Marketing the book. That means the book is done, the book is coming out, or it already came out, or is on its way out. You have a publishing date, you have a name of the book, you got to cover it, you can show it to people, all that. Marketing your book, meaning making sure people know that it exists, is your job no matter how your book comes out. So that means if you sign with the biggest publishing company in the world, it's your job to market the book. Yes, even if you have a publishing deal, it is your job to market the book. If you self-publish, of course it's your job to market the book. Everything's your job when you self-publish a book. When you traditional publish, they don't help market your book. I did a publishing deal. When I put my book, Working Your Game Out, the publishing company didn't do any marketing for me. They didn't get me on any radio interviews. They didn't give me any podcast appearances. They didn't have any billboards in Times Square on my behalf. Now, again, there are exceptions to this. If your name is big enough and you have enough leverage and it's in your contract, they will do this for you. I was in Times Square and I believe it was Lewis Howes. I seen a billboard for him for one of his books coming out. I don't think Lewis Howes paid for that billboard. I think it was probably in his contract that his publisher paid for that because his brand is big enough and he was able to leverage that. Or Michelle Obama, she could probably get an interview with Oprah because she got a book coming out. She didn't go make the phone call to get on Oprah. Her publisher did that and they were able to make it happen because of the size of her brand. Now again, if Michelle Obama is listening to this, then she can probably concur. Now any of you who's not as famous as Michelle, you're gonna have to do your own marketing. You got to get your own media appearances. You got to make people know who you are. It is your job to market and sell your book no matter how it comes out. Did everybody hear what I just said? This is probably, aside from do I have the option between traditional and self-publishing, that's probably the second biggest misconception. This one is the next biggest misconception about book publishing, that people think incorrectly that when you sign a traditional publishing contract with a company, that just because you sign with them, all you had to do is write the book and they're gonna just put this big machine behind you to market your book and you're gonna be famous. False. That is not true. When that book comes out, and this is something they're gonna ask you before you sign the contract, as a matter of fact, they're gonna ask you, when your book comes out, if we decide to do a book with you, how are you gonna sell it? What are your plans to actually market and promote this book? How big is your platform? How many followers you got on social media? How many subscribers you have on YouTube? How big is your email list? Who do you know that can help promote this book? Do you know any big influencers who would be willing to share your book and tell the world about it? They will ask you this in what they call a book proposal. A book proposal is about a 20-page document that asks you a whole bunch of questions that I'm going over the answers to these questions, or the questions that you're going to have to ask. I'm going over them right here in this masterclass. They're going to ask you about all of this stuff. And they're going to want to know, what are you going to do to sell the book? And that proposal is basically your pitch to the publishing company. And that proposal is not good, they're going to say no and you won't get the deal. Okay, so just because they ask you for a proposal does not mean you have a contract. And I went through this whole thing and they had it in the proposal, Dre, how are you going to sell this book when it comes out? And I needed to answer that question. And if they didn't like my answer, they wouldn't have offered me a contract. So these are things that you need to be thinking about. And this is probably the biggest misconception, I think, out there in anything, that people think that just because you sign with some big company for any type of business, that they're just going to put a machine behind you and all of a sudden you're going to wake up famous. This is wrong, folks. Having a book and having it listed on Amazon or even on the shelves of a physical bookstore is not the end of your work. It is the beginning of your work. Let me show you how. Go to Amazon.com right now, or open up the Amazon app on your phone. Go to the books section of Amazon. Just by your estimation, How many books do you think are on sale on Amazon right now? Probably a couple million. That'd be pretty accurate. Go into a bookstore. Next time you see a bookstore, go inside the bookstore and don't even walk around. Just go inside the bookstore. Step inside and just look around. How many books are actually on sale inside that bookstore? Even a little tiny bookstore, how many books are on sale inside that bookstore? A lot, right? More than you can even open up and look at every single one, right? So here's what you need to understand. I'm telling you to do that to give gravity to this point. Having your book available means absolutely nothing in terms of readership or sales of your book, because there are a million books out there. Now, having a book out does mean you can say, hey, I'm a published author, I have a book out. But you did write that book for the purpose of people actually reading it, right? You wrote the book to help people or entertain people or to inform people, right? Well, the only way they can be helped, entertained, or informed by your book is if they actually acquire the book, first of all, and then they actually read it, second of all, right? That means you must get the book into their hands. And just because it's on Amazon or is in a bookstore does not mean they actually own the book. You need people to own the book, take it home, open it, and read it. I was just talking to someone yesterday, and she said to me, Dre, I got your book, Work on Your Game, on my bookshelf. I bought a bookshelf for my house. I put your book, Work on Your Game, on the bookshelf. I said, oh, great. Did you read it? And she laughed and said, no. So just because somebody has the book, now she bought it, we got the money, but she didn't read the book. So she didn't get all the value that I wanted her to get. I got the value because I got the money, but I want her to read the book so she can actually get the game that is in the book. And this is your job. This is your job as an author, 100% your job, even when you are traditionally published. I know I'm repeating myself here, but I have to because people have hard heads. Book publishers specialize in publishing books, meaning the book came out. They do not specialize in marketing books. They care about selling books, but they do not specialize in selling books. Do you understand the difference between those two? It is your job to sell the book. And if you don't do your job of selling the book, they're not going to be so happy with you, and they probably may not be interested in doing another deal with you simply because you might not have sold enough books for their liking. So they want to know, how big is your platform? What are your plans for selling a book? And if they don't like your answers, they won't sign you. Clear? Point number 5. Today's topic, this is the last point. Today's topic, traditional versus self-publishing. Marketing and selling of your book. We just talked about this, but I got to tell you something else. It never ends. This is a never-ending game. All right, you are signing yourself up for an endless loop of marketing, promotion, and selling. How long have you heard me talk about the mirror of motivation? All right, if you follow me on social media and you look at my social media story, how many days go by where I don't mention at least one of my books? I do it every day, forever. Every time this show comes out, a new episode, I'm going to mention one of my books. Why? Because it never ends. Now, if you want people to continually buy your stuff, you must continually market it. You know how much money Nike spends on marketing? Nike spends more money on marketing in an hour than most Americans make in a year. Now, why is this? Even though Nike's already very popular and they already make a lot of money, because the only way they're going to keep making that money is they must keep marketing and promoting their products in order for those products to keep selling. Those products do not just, quote, sell themselves. Some people like to use that phrase, it just sells itself. No product sells itself. Now, if you have a great product, you might not need to market and promote as hard. You might not need to spend as much to get someone's attention, but you must market and promote any product in order for people to know about it, because most people are not sitting around waiting to know about your product. All right, they're looking for a solution for themselves, and it's your job to get in front of them. And I lied, I told you this is the last point. It's not the last point. I got one more after this. Once your book comes out, you will be selling that book forever. All right, once your product comes out, you'll be selling that product forever. Okay, that is if you want people reading it forever. Now, if you just want people to read the book for the first month, then you could just market it for a month and then you can move on to the next product. But if you actually want people to keep consuming that thing or thinking about it or knowing about it or being informed about it, you must keep selling it. Most books do not sell themselves. Most products do not sell themselves. Nike is a pretty popular product. It doesn't sell itself. They spend a lot of money on marketing. I think the number, I can't remember the exact number somebody said. I think they said it was $15 per second. Yes, a second. $15 per second on marketing. It was something like that. I don't know if that was the exact number, but that was what somebody said, just to give you an idea of how much money Nike spends on marketing. And they sell a lot of products, do they not? Now, the only thing they got to ask themselves is, are we making at least $15 per second? And I think Nike does. I've been in a Nike store. They make a lot of money. So if that happens, your book just sells itself and you don't do anything, listen, congratulations to you, and get on your knees and pray to God, pray to your higher being. But most of the time, that's not going to happen. All right, marketers and salespeople sell products. All right, products do not sell themselves. All right, they are inanimate objects. They are impartial. Point number 6. This is the last point. Today's topic, once again, traditional versus self-publishing. Write your next book. A person I know who works in the publishing industry told me, Dre, the best way to market one book is to write another book. One good way to market a book is one good way, but I think is one of the best ways is to have that next one, or one that complements it, or whatever is next, or whatever came before. Why is this? First of all, when you have another book to go with the last book, it gives you another chance to capture an audience. Because maybe the last book, maybe some of you heard about the Mirror of Motivation and said, Dre, it sounds good, but it's not really for me. Or maybe it just wasn't for you at that time when I was talking about it. Maybe it's still not for you today, and I'm still talking about it. Fine. So the next book, the third day, now I might get a chance to get your attention. And if you like the third day enough, you might say, all right, this book was so good. Now that I've read one of Dre's books, let me go back and get another one. Then you go get the Mirror of Motivation. So you might not even get them in the order in which they came out. Maybe the next one, after the third day might be the one that gets your attention. And you like that one, then you go back and get the previous 2, and then you go get all 30. Maybe that'll work for you. But every time I put a new book out, it's giving me a chance to market my other books, because now it's giving me a new chance to get your attention. It gives me an excuse every time I put a book out to market and promote myself to you, because no matter what book I'm talking about, I'm still talking about me, because I'm the author of every one of these books. So it gives me another chance to market and promote myself, another excuse to talk about myself and tout my intellectual property, which is stuff that came out of my head that I put on paper, to you, that's going to help you, because I'm going to tell you how it's going to help you. That's the only reason you'll pay attention. And if my next book is great, it will lead you again to go check back for the previous one. So like somebody might read one of my books today and say, damn, this is so good, I'm gonna go get Dre, I wanna know your first book. I wanna read the first book you ever put out. Then I'll tell you to go get Buy a Game, which you can still download for free, by the way, if you go to workonmygame.com/buy-a-game. Because maybe you didn't know about me 11 years ago when I put that book out. And if you're in the thought leadership space, which I am, you probably have more to say than just what's in one book. All right, the third day is just one framework that I have amongst many. I've given you a couple thousand frameworks just on this show alone. So the third day is not the only thing that I have to say. I got a lot more to say. So once you read the third day, you're like, damn, I like this Dre Baldwin guy. Let me see what else he has going on. Maybe you become a coaching client. Maybe you join my mastermind. Maybe you text me at 305-384-6894 and get my daily motivation text. Maybe you start following me on Instagram. Maybe you start watching my YouTube videos. So there's a lot of things that you may do. Maybe you work at a company and you say, you know what, boss, let's bring Dre Baldwin to give a speech to our company, because I really like what he wrote about in his book. So just because someone bought your book doesn't mean that's the end of the relationship. Whatever else you have to offer, and this is the brand that you can build around your book, that also is the next step after people like your book. So the book is not the end, it's the beginning. It's the beginning for you when it comes to selling and promoting, and it's the beginning for your consumer when they read it, if they actually like the book and there's some actual value inside of it, which I'm going to assume you took care of. Now on Clubhouse, every Tuesday, me and my friend Patricia Wooster and a couple other moderators, we do rooms specifically around the concept of books and marketing and selling and branding around your book, whether it's for you to author or the book itself. If you just follow me on Instagram, or you just follow me on Clubhouse, actually, it's a better place to follow me. You'll know every Tuesday we do those, and every Thursday we usually do an open Q&A. But Tuesday we usually go a little bit deeper than the Thursday. Thursday's more surface. So all that being said, now I'm going to recap today's class. And I told you I will have a deeper dive on all of this stuff that I'm going to do in my business mastermind group, which I haven't even announced yet, but this is going to be in there guaranteed when I do it. But when this comes out, that may already be out. And if it's not, send me a text or send me a DM on any social platform and I'll let you know what's going on. So traditional versus self-publishing, which should you choose and why? Point number 1, first question is, do you actually have a choice? Because most of the time you don't. To publish a book traditionally, you had to be signed to a publishing contract, which means somebody has to offer you a contract. And the publishing world is a buyer's market, meaning there are more authors trying to get a deal than there are deals to be gotten. So you have to be chosen to get a publishing contract. To self-publish, nobody needs to choose you. You can choose yourself. Point number 2, who's your book for? Who do you want to read it? Why should they read it? And what is it going to do for them? You must have this question answered no matter how you put your book out. If you don't have this answer, you will never be able to compel anyone to go get your book unless it's your grandma or your sister. Point number 3, infrastructure. Traditional publishing offers infrastructure to an author the same way the New York Knicks offer infrastructure to a basketball player, and in exchange for that infrastructure, they get a percentage of the money. As a self-publisher, you are responsible for all of the infrastructure, and in exchange for you doing all of that work, you get to keep all of the money. Then you distribute it to whomever needs to be paid. So you are basically the owner, the boss. Point number 4, marketing is your job no matter how your book comes out. The biggest misconception about publishing for either option of traditional or self is that people think that once their book comes out, it's just going to sell itself just because you're listed on Amazon. That is wrong. There are 3 million products on Amazon. How is anybody going to find your book if you don't do any marketing and promoting? Trick question, nobody's going to find it. It is your job to market your book 100% no matter how you put your book out. If you want a traditional publishing deal, understand they are going to ask you before they offer you a contract, how are you going to sell your book? And if you don't have a good answer, or your stats are not impressive, your platform's not impressive, they're not offering you a publishing deal, because how are they going to make their money back? It's just a good business decision for them to leave you alone. Point number 5, marketing and selling of your book never ends. Once you put a product out, you have signed yourself up for a lifetime job of marketing and promotion of that product. If you don't like marketing and promoting, start liking it, because that's the only way you will ever sell anything in your life. Point number 6, write the next book. One good way to market a book is to have another book. It gives you another chance to capture an audience, gives you an excuse to market and promote yourself. And if your next book is great, it will lead people to look back at whatever else you had and they'll buy your previous books. And if you're a thought leader, you have other offers besides just books, then people will buy those as well. So a book is a great way to let people understand that you have some intellectual property that is worth paying for, not just in a $20 book, but maybe in a $2,000 coaching session or whatever else you want to offer. You can be creative as an entrepreneur. You can offer whatever you want as long as you can find somebody to pay for it. All that said, send me a text. Tell me the best insight you got from today's masterclass. This is a deep one right here. All right, his number is 305-384-6894. And again, I will be going even deeper into this for any of you authors who need to know these things and need to know the details of them, even deeper than what I talked about here today. In my business mastermind. It's not even out yet, but I'm putting it into the universe. It will be out by the time you hear this, and if it's not, it's about to be. My number, 305-384-6894. Work on your game. Dre all day.